And we welcome you into the Sam and Cole podcast on a what could be a very momentous start to things here as far as the Jaguars are concerned and the city of Jacksonville is concerned. And Sam, that's because the state of the franchise today was more than just a state of the franchise announcement. It was really the unveiling of the vision for the Shipyards. And let's start there before we get into football, because that was the most significant thing today. I think by far the most significant thing that was talked about today, and that is what Shad Khan wants to do with the Shipyards.
Sure, and Cole, I've been to a half dozen press conferences about how the shipyards are going to be changed, and this is another one. The difference, as I just heard Tom Will say, is Khan has a reputation as a doer, not just as a thinker, and clearly the vision here is massive. And I asked him about, did he have to tell people bigger on more than one occasion? And he said yes. Sometimes the big vision is the best vision, because he really believes that this is not a piecemeal project, that this thing has to come together all as one. How it's going to be financed, I do know some of the inside baseball on that, and it is one of the first of the proposals that the city will hear, where the city will share in the profitability of it. And because I guess when you're Khan and you're at that level economically, you don't have to suck up all the profits. So you can spread it around, and it makes it a much more attractive kind of project for the city to get involved in.
Well, and also it's city land right now, right?
Right.
You own the
Sure.
land. If this is going to be, and this is a very interesting study from the standpoint of a true public-private partnership kind of approach. We talk a lot about that in this city about it's a public-private partnership. Well, there's city money and there's private money. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a real partnership, but this could really be a real partnership potentially if what you're talking about does happen and it does come through, because that's something that yes, it's partly about making money on that deal, but for Khan, the real upside for that is to be able to really put his stamp on the city downtown, to change behavior for people in Jacksonville as it relates to downtown. And if you can have people who, as they say, live, work, stay, play, it can be a whole different, it can be a game changer in terms of that area. And there's some other things that are going on down there. Of course, Intuition Ale is going in down there near the stadium, and there'll be more events because of the soccer team. There are a lot of different things that are going on, that within that area that sort of has been, there's been a gap in downtown versus the sports complex, and this will help to bridge that gap a little bit. It did bring up this question in my mind, though, Sam, and that is, what does this do to or for the landing in the near term and the long term?
I think personally it enhances that, because I know that Tony Slayman is wants to have a renovation of the landing that would include a elimination of the entrance ramp that comes off of Bay Street, that comes from the west to the southern entry there. And there was some concern about the pedestrian and bicycle access that so many people use with that particular ramp. And Tony wants to update the landing. If the stadium's 20 years old, the landing's got to be 35 years old. I don't see any problem with that. I don't know if the city would be involved at that as well. But what you just said is exactly what they talked about. The architect talked about that this was a connecting point between coming over the bridge, the Hart Bridge, or the Matthews, and this particular thing, connecting that with downtown, creating a triangle between Springfield and the core of downtown, where the Main Street Bridge is, and that there's currently a disconnect. And they showed some overhead shots and some different things were to show how they plan to try and make this happen from an east-west traversing standpoint, but also north-south.
I did notice a couple of things. Again, I know, first of all, if you think back to last year looking at or 2 years ago, looking at the first ideas and concepts for the scoreboards and pools and so forth, it turned out substantially different than the first vision. Right? And sometimes there are realities that come into play. It stayed with the basic theme, but it's not like it's going to look exactly like this. But there are a couple of things I noticed. First of all, the amphitheater that they talked about within this looks like it's about the size of, maybe the landing amphitheater courtyard. This is not a bring in, Eric Clapton to play an outdoor concert kind of amphitheater, which is fine. I mean, that's something that I think at some point we probably need in Jackson.
You can't do that because the people in Empire Point complain
It gets
too much.
too loud. Right. Yeah, it gets too loud there. Number two, I didn't see the Hart Bridge Expressway on that at all. So I don't know what that means for that kind of construction. And I think I heard you say on Channel 4 on Tuesday that they want to get this started in a year. And so how long it's going to take, I mean, who knows the scope of the project. Yeah, but listen, there is some infrastructure that's going to have to be managed as part of this. And
the one thing that I said to Mark Lamping that he bristled a little bit at, I said, clearly you wouldn't make this announcement if you didn't already have the pieces in place. And he said, well, we'll see who kind of wants to go along in this situation. So I think they've got certain pieces of the puzzle solved. He said they've talked to everybody they needed to talk to and anybody who wanted to talk to them. But clearly, Shad Khan doesn't want to put a strip mall in there,
right?
Or just a hotel. He wants it to be a project that is massive in scope, that they call transformative. And if they build it anywhere near what the renderings were today and what they seem to be thinking about, it will move downtown. I mean, it'll shift the downtown focus.
Yeah, and that will how that can impact other things, Sam. I mean, because there's been talk about, well, what about the convention center? What will that change at all? The old courthouse. There are a lot of folks. I'm not the first to bring this up. Certainly, is that where the old courthouse is? The City Hall Annex there, that would be a great place for the convention center connected in. You can really see downtown moving to the east in that situation, and then at some point, if they build a soccer stadium, what happens in that situation? I mean, so where does it go west? Does it go east? And so if it does go downtown, you're right. This shifts the center of gravity of downtown further east than it has been at any time in Jacksonville's history. Maybe with the exception of just after the fire, when in 1901, where a lot of east downtown was the only thing that wasn't
that was left standing. Yeah, I will say this, Cole, that there are a lot of worse guys we could hitch our wagon to than Shad Khan. And while I don't think that you have to follow everything he thinks or that Lamping says, I do think that it is a better plan of action to try to make things work with him, because we've never had anybody like him in town who has this willingness to be committed to it and to commit his own money, his own ideas. Clearly, people at that level are used to getting their own way, and there's an awful lot of positive things that can happen along the way if, in fact, we embrace some of these ideas and not spend so much time focusing on what can't happen, but rather what can happen, and then how we can and he will help coordinate those things all together.
And I'll go on record. I think the vision is terrific. I think the vision is tremendous. I think there are details that certainly are going to have to be worked out, ironed out, and I know that those will come. But you have to have a great vision to start with if you're going to get anything dramatic done, and they've got that. A couple of things I do want to point out as well on this.
You notice, by the way, they didn't talk about putting a roof on the stadium anymore.
Right. So
or a sunshade, but maybe they still are.
Well, and this, I go back to last year when we were talking about. You mentioned you asked a question to make Mark Lamping bristle, which is
it's pretty easy to do actually.
But so, and the one that I asked last year that he bristled at was, do you have to be careful about going back and asking for more public money, more public money, more public money? Well, they've got this thing now where they're going to go to Tallahassee this week and hope to get a piece of that state money for it. Okay, fine. I think people are more likely to feel like, okay, well, if it's state money and it's going to go to somebody for a sports complex or sports activities or arenas or stadiums.
It's got to go somewhere. Why not us? Right.
Why not us? I think people are fine with that. And I think this stroke here with it being, if it truly is a public-private partnership where there's not taxpayer money going in, but there is city money going out that can be spent on other things down the future, I think that's a wise thing to do. The practice fields themselves there that are
the 3 tiers.
I don't know if it's 2 tiers or 3 tiers, but I don't think this is going to happen. It looks too much to me. You know what I
It,
mean?
it was one of those things that I'm looking at going, are they really going to build that? I mean, it was a river level, and then there was a one that was kind of covered, and then there was one on the roof
Yeah.
that the architect said was a kind of a public space.
Yeah. Okay. Now, and let me.
I mean, they're going to let us play pickup games there? I mean, what
Right.
fun.
Yeah. So I think what it boils down to, and I don't think you're going to have a practice field on top of the covered Jaguars practice field. I just don't see that coming. But I think it's a creative way to create a way for the Jaguars to be able to get out of the elements to do what they need to do there.
Right.
And the third level that sort of looked like it was maybe 7 or 8 feet below the level of the under. I don't know if it wasn't shaded or enclosed field. I mean, that just looks like, hey, who wants to flood something?
Right.
So that's just I'm nitpicking because we know it's not going to quite turn out this way, but there's some things on there that just really jumped out and got my attention as far as this is concerned. But I love the vision. I think it's great. I think it's major impact potential for Jacksonville. I think it can be, in a lot of ways, it can be created. The other thing I thought was wonderful was the USS Adams being part of the presentation, having that old Navy ship there. They've been trying to bring that to Jacksonville for a long time, and the ship is there. It can be used as a museum and a tourist spot. And by the way, how great would that be, Sam, to do a post game show from on top of that ship?
Well, from the very first renderings as they put it up before they started talking about everything, I thought that was the berthing for Shad's yacht, because that's about the same. Shad's yacht and the Adams are about the same size. I do know that Shad does want a spot at this Shipyards project for him to put his boat, because there is really no spot big enough on the East Coast for him to park his boat, save in front of the Hyatt. But the Adams is I'm sure when they said that in a public forum, I'm sure those people who have been trying to do that just about jumped out of their skin.
And
now,
I saw the guys there who have been involved with that,
yeah,
Joe Snowberger and that group. So
not a lot, no talk or rendering about um, an aquarium,
right
there, which had been talked a lot about. And although apparently there's $25,000 in the budget here to do a feasibility study about an aquarium there at some point, somewhere along the line. But I mean, that would be just a cherry on top of everything if that in fact would be this thing. If you haven't seen any pictures of it, just go look at some pictures. It's just amazing at the level that they're thinking, and that if it could come out, put it this way, if it comes out half as big, it's still unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little football while we have a chance here. Free agency starts here in a couple of weeks. The Jaguars have a bunch of salary cap. What was it, $62 million or something under the salary cap?
The most. Yeah.
Of anybody in the National Football League. Are they really going to make a difference in free agency? If I had to pin you down right now?
I think that in free agency, the Jaguars can solidify some things. There's the free agent class this year isn't a bunch of big stars, but I think you can get some solid guys, as our friend Vic Ketchman, who, by the way, I heard is going to retire after this year. They always used to call them jars on the shelf, and you need those guys to come out and play week in and week out in your building process, and then playmakers and stars win games and win championships for you. And I think the Jaguars can do that in free agency a little bit. It's a big moving puzzle. They're headed to the combine. I talked to Gus Bradley about that today, and he said, I like the combine so much. And I said, I mean, geez, between all the tape you look at, and you coach the Senior Bowl, and you used to have private visits with these guys, do you really learn anything at the combine? He said, you see them in group situations, and he said, for me, I stay at the hotel that's adjoining Lucas Oil Stadium. I walk downstairs, and he said, I'm immersed in it for these 9 days, and that gives me a real sense of what these guys can be like when they're on a team.
Well, thank goodness Gus can find something to get himself excited around the combine. I was very concerned that he
You
would
were
be.
worried about that?
Yeah, yeah, I thought that was going to be a real problem. I actually think if they just get jars on the shelf in free agency, it's a failure. I
Do you?
think they're more than just jars on the shelf away from where they need to be.
Well, no,
Uh,
I didn't say that because I agree with you there. But there, I don't know. I mean, are there stars out there to
well, I
sign?
mean, you can. There are some guys who can make a difference for you for sure. I mean, would Ndamukong Suh make a difference for this team?
Yes, and I think they should sign him.
I agree with you. Justin Houston,
Will he be available?
if he's available again. I mean, there's a lot of this what ifs
Right.
and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. But
I mean, Des Bryant is not. DeMarco Murray might be.
yeah, I don't think
Worth
you go out and spend on a
worth it?
running back.
No.
No, I wouldn't spend that kind of money. Randall Cobb,
Randall Cobb, does he have too many years behind him?
he's only 24, 25 years old. He's not that old. He seems like he's been around a long time. But
Really?
yeah, yeah. So
Kevin, how old is Randall Cobb? Kevin, look that up. How old is Randall Cobb?
I'll look that up while we're doing this. I think
While we're talking. No, but I agree. Now, if you want to say Ndamukong Suh, he's 32, 24. God, it does seem like he's been around forever. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I agree. Those are the guys I think that the Jaguars, and remember, in the first 2 years with Caldwell making some of these decisions, I think he knew that the team was not going to be good, and he did not want to bring guys in and spend money on guys who were going to take some of their best years and not help the Jaguars with the numbers of wins. So now's the time. Now's the time to go ahead and make a play for Sue and make a play for Cobb.
Yeah.
And who is it? It looks like the Patriots are good. What's the guy's name? Devin McCourty?
Mm-hmm.
Looks like he's going to be the franchise guy up there. Although that's the kind of guy the Jaguars need to pursue as well if he's available.
Demarius Thomas, Julius Thomas of the Broncos, wide receiver and tight end.
One of those two guys will be franchised.
Right.
And so if the tight end is available, go get him.
Mike Iupati, the guard from the 49ers, I'll take him.
Do the Jaguars need guards?
They need better offensive line play.
All right. Well, what I'm saying is that I think at guard they're okay, but I think if you're going to go spend money on somebody, even if it's a right tackle, they're going to give Jokel another year to figure it out.
Brian Bulaga is a guy who could play right tackle. He's played left, played right with the Packers. He's set to be a free agent. In other words, there are some guys. I don't think Bulaga is a game changer, but I think he improves you. And it depends on how you approach. The Patriots for years have had this theory of in free agency, if we can release a guy and sign somebody else at his position, and he's better than the previous guy, we'll do it. They're not married to anybody who's not named Tom Brady, right? Everybody is expendable, and the Jaguars don't have the luxury of being able to do that because they don't have the quarterback who's proven. Now, Bortles maybe can become that. He's not that now. So I think if the Jaguars don't get 3 to 5 regulars/starters out of free agency, and by regulars I mean somebody who would come in the nickel, or somebody who comes in, regular rotation on the defensive line, or contributes on, is a starter on special teams and is a backup on offense, whatever, something like that. If that doesn't happen, then I'll think I will almost certainly, unless it's they get 2 superstars who come in and make a big difference. I'll think of this as a failure of free agency because they have all the money to spend. They're in a position where they've built young. They need some more veteran players.
Let's say they get 5 guys who start, and last year they got 3, 4 for a while.
Beatles,
right? Clemens, Hood,
Red Bryant.
They thought that
regular. Yeah.
They thought Dakota Watson was going to be be one of those, but that didn't happen. But so if they get the same number, you move the Jaguars over/under number somewhere up north of 6. But if they don't, it hangs down there still in the 3 or 4 spot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think probably the best it could possibly look is probably 7 for over/under after free agency, and just because that's a long way to go from where they are to 7 wins. So we'll see how it pans out. We'll talk more about that as we get closer. I do want to spend a minute here, Sam, if we could, on to get your thoughts here on the Armada launching with a record crowd for the NASL. It's a guy who was very involved with the T-Men, broadcast the T-Men games back in the day. What was the T-Men record? Was 19,000 or something?
They drew regularly about 17,700, and against the Strikers in one game, we did a lot of promotion for it and got almost 19,000 at the game.
Okay, all right. I thought it was a Cosmos game with Pele, but it was a Strikers game that they had.
No, the Cosmos game with Pele. I happen to know this because it was the night my oldest daughter was born, and it's the only game I missed.
Oh.
I was in Baptist Hospital when Austin was born that night. It rained so hard that the ball floated on the field. This was before all the renovations at the Gator Bowl, and it was high tide. It was a full moon, and it had rained 6 inches that day, and the ball was floating on the field. I think Canalia scored both goals against the T-Men that night as they lost 2-0. But so yeah, that held the crowd down that night because it was a monsoon.
And I'll obviously, I've had a lot of opportunities to talk about this on Armada broadcast and so forth, but I wanted to get your reaction to.
You keep talking about a record. What record are you talking about?
It was the NASL preseason record, modern NASL, modern day.
Modern day. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And you know, it's a nice crowd. What my thought process of that? I wasn't surprised by it. I know that there is a segment of fans, and clearly Mark Frisch did these kinds of studies as well, that there is a soccer audience in Jacksonville, and it's one of the reasons that U.S. Soccer put the friendly here against Scotland, and then the one of the whatever they called that, the getaway series last year before they went to the World Cup. You know, there is a group here, and we're also accessible from a lot of other places where people really like the game as well, whether it's South Florida or West Florida or Tampa or Atlanta or anywhere. We're easy to get to and easy to come to the games. I think what you saw that night is they've done a nice job with the Armada in the build-up. It became the thing to do.
Mm-hmm. And
that's where the Armada have positioned themselves right now. Kind of like even the casual fan will say, oh, it's kind of the thing to do. Let's go. And that's to me, that's the marketing niche that they have to figure out how to hold on to. Because other sports have had that, but have lost it. The Armada have to figure out how to hold on to that.
Yeah, I'll think back to.
And I don't think it has anything to do with wins, losses, star players, English speakers, Spanish, style of play. It has to be the thing to do.
You know, and I'll think back to the Jacksonville Tomcats in AF2.
Yep.
The little brother of the Arena Football League. First year, packed the house. Every game was a sellout. First time there'd been arena football in Jacksonville. Next year, they were at about 75% capacity, something like that. Next year, they were about 65% capacity. Third year, there were some other issues that happened with the league and player costs and so forth that ended things. But they had a chance to capture that thing to do and couldn't sustain it. So I think your point's a good one, that it has to be, and I've said this for years, it's got to be a social event before it's a sporting event.
Yep.
You're going to be able to sustain it because there just aren't enough people who are just going to go to a sporting event for the fact that it's a sporting event in Jacksonville or almost any other city for that matter.
Couldn't agree more. Look at the Axemen.
Yep.
Have had their ups and downs, but certainly in their ups, when they brought Leeds and the Rabbitohs here, I mean, it became the thing to do, and it still is a social event because they sell beer at UNF, and it is a thing to do for a lot of people who still don't know anything about the game, but they go because it's a thing to do with their friends.
Yep, that's right. All right, that'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. You can follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper. You can get this podcast via iTunes or on Stitcher. We'll see if that thing to do continues. The next home preseason match for the Armada, February 28th, and they'll play at Community First Park at the baseball grounds. So 14,000 roughly was at Everbank Field. They're going to hold between 8,000 and 9,000 capacity at the baseball grounds. So
who are they playing?
That will be the Fort Lauderdale Strikers.
The Strikers are coming.
Strikers.
By the way, the Strikers. The reason we had such a big crowd for that, we had a we had an incident in the previous game with the Strikers where one of our guys, Jack Newton, knocked 5 teeth out of another guy, and it was a big deal here, and it was a big deal down there because Fort Lauderdale had the Dolphins, and that was it. So the Strikers were a big deal down there.
Or the Panthers.
So, yeah, so there was a lot of back talk and hacking being done in the media between the two teams, and a lot of fans got involved, and that's one of the reasons that they came out, because they were looking for a fight.
It was a rivalry.
It was a true rivalry. The Rowdies and the Strikers really were rivals of the team, and I can tell you, because I was close with a lot of the players, as you know, you become when you cover them as the play-by-play guy and you're there every day. They really didn't like those guys. I mean, they really didn't like them.
It makes for a great rivalry when there's really bad blood, not just
not just
fans don't like the other. All right, that'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you very soon as a free agency approaches in the National Football League.